Good evening and welcome to the very first Fantasy Wildcard Devy show of 2025. My name is Jack. You can catch me on X at JackCDCTT. And I am delighted to be joined as ever by maybe our newest Ole Miss fan, Phil. How you doing, Phil?
Yeah, very well. I wouldn't go as far as to say I'm an Ole Miss fan, but obviously I had to wear my Christmas present, mate. So yeah, delighted to be here, mate. Welcome to 2025, Devy fans. We've got loads in store this year for you as we continue to bring this podcast forward. And yeah, we're absolutely buzzing that you're with us, mate. So yeah, good Christmas and New Year, Jack.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you. Good to see some family. Got a clean sweep of parents, in-laws, grandparents, cousins, aunts, uncles, everything. It was great. It was great.
Stuff. And
Yourself?
more importantly, how many championships did you win?
Or, well, unfortunately, just the one, but it was the key one. It's my home league, back-to-back championships. I've made the top four every year since its inception, but I failed to win a championship until last year. And my good friend has been taking the mick out of me for it for so long, and now he has to eat those words. So it felt very sweet.
Good man. Yeah, excellent. I did all right. Couple of Dynasty League titles, no Devy League ones. I really thought I was going to take probably my favourite Devy lineup. They kind of made a late surge and were really coming good towards the tail end of the season. And the final was one of those. It went back and forth, some high scores. Ultimately, fell short by a couple of points, and it came down to trusting. Well, I played Terry McLaurin. And over the recent weeks, you would say that was an excellent decision. However, I'm fairly stacked at wide receiver. And in week 17, I made the decision to play McLaurin over Malik Neighbours, who then went off for 36 points. That would have seen me home. So it's self-sabotage. And in spite of some brilliant wins, I'm really hanging up on that one defeat in a really competitive league that maybe I should have taken. So, hey, it is what it is.
Ever so frustrating. Such a disappointment. And it was such a strange week, wasn't it? Championship week was full of injuries and late no starts. So most people who made those championship games actually found their rosters depleted with a load of stars not playing. So commiserations if you missed out despite dominating your league. That is an absolute kicker. But yeah, we hope that you have all taken at least one championship, and if not, getting in some more leagues so that you've got a bigger spread, a bigger opportunity to take home those crowns in 2025/2026, depending on when the championship game falls in next season. Who knows how many league games we're going to have and when they're going to fall.
That's right. But listen, we've got so much to talk about. Obviously, on tonight's show, we want to get into some of the college football playoffs, the big-time performances from some of your Devy assets in those key college football games. Listen, there's been so many mixed opinions about that 12-team format, but we've seen some brilliant games. So we want to touch on those. Obviously, there's been other bowl games as well outside of the 12-team playoffs. There's been a couple of standout performances. One of them might be the quarterback of the jersey that I am wearing this evening. Okay. And then, again, a little bit of transfer portal news, and then how to respond, like a bit of a kind of tactics corner, I think. A little bit of a response to what to do if a Devy asset that you were expecting to hit your roster in 2025 in this ever-evolving world of NIL and the transfer portal decides to go back to school. Some kind of strategizing, how we maybe project these things moving forward, and how to respond if you've been desperately waiting for that running back, that receiver, that QB, and all of a sudden they've decided they're not going to come out this year, and how it can kind of impact your rosters. So yeah, absolutely loads. Jack, I suppose the best place to start is the college football playoffs, given that your team are in the thick of it and performing incredibly well, might it be said. So where do you want to start?
Well, I think we've got to start by acknowledging that we are recording. This is a behind the curtains kind of bit for you. We are recording before the Notre Dame Penn State game is played, but we will be releasing this episode after. So we don't know the result, and we obviously cannot comment on how Jeremiah Love looks or any of the other players in that game. We don't know the result because it's in the future. So any comments on that we'll catch in our next show. But how can I not start with how Ohio State have flipped the switch on offense and taken that Michigan loss and used it as motivation for an absolute annihilation of Tennessee and, more surprisingly, the number 1 ranked Oregon Ducks. Will Howard has been playing the best football I've ever seen from him. Now, admittedly, he played a very different scheme at Kansas State and he ran the ball a lot more. As a passer in these last 2 games, he's completing over 70% of passes. He is distributing the ball really well. He is sometimes locking on to Jeremiah Smith, but for good reason. And he's giving him a chance to... So he's locking on, which you don't necessarily want to hear about a quarterback, but he is throwing those passes in a place where only Jeremiah Smith can get them. Now, there was one interception that was throwing Jeremiah Smith's way into double coverage, but that was kind of to do with the deflection against Tennessee. So, yeah, really impressed with Will Howard. His Devy stock is on the rise. I think the nature of the college football playoffs and the expanded version we're getting this year has got more eyes on it from NFL fans, and therefore performing hot right now is probably jumped Will Howard up at least 1 round in the NFL draft.
Certainly. Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you latch onto this idea of the 12-team format, really kind of increasing exposure to NFL fans, and definitely this side of the pond. I've got people, and I don't know whether it's the way it's fallen, and the NFL's kind of Christmas week, having NFL games scattered in between every day, and maybe just the resurgence of college football being available on Sky Sports. But I'm getting people in a lot of my dynasty leagues texting me and going, I don't really play Devy, Phil, but tell me about this guy. Like, what do you know about this guy? This guy looks good. Where should I be drafting this guy? And, you know, I don't want to give all my secrets away, but it just shows that, like, there's definitely more eyes and more exposure on it this time around, it feels. And yeah, the Jeremiah Smith thing, listen, he was the worst kept secret in Devy this year because the second he got rolling, who was ever going to stop him? But it's almost like he's one we don't need to talk about now, as fun as he is to talk about, because his value is only going to skyrocket. I saw a tweet this week that said, is he the most valuable Devy player we've ever seen? And you can certainly make that argument. And yeah, 2 absolutely dominant performances. But I think there's been some really good performances from teams that have been eliminated as well. Like, I think there are really fruitful signs, and we've talked about his resurgence over the season as it's gone on. But if you are the owner of Cade Klubnik at Clemson, I think the future is bright. He really, really did his bit for Clemson in that quarterfinal game, and, you know, was a touch unfortunate. And I really feel like all of a sudden, this next QB class in 2026 is starting to look up. It really, really is. And Klubnik's there in the absolute thick of it. And anybody else stand out for you? Oh, particularly maybe from that Clemson game?
Yeah, so that, like you say, the really impressive thing about Klubnik in that game is that he really shouldered the team. The run game was shut down by Texas, and Clemson were in danger of just kind of fizzling out of that game in the second half. But Klubnik really raised his game with his legs and in his passing game. And the guy that we have kind of mentioned here, there, and everywhere across the year is TJ Moore. And I absolutely love this receiver, this freshman. He had 9 catches, 116 yards and a touchdown against maybe the best secondary in college football this year. Texas's secondary is top notch. Their whole defense is great, and the secondary in particular. And we saw some really precise route running and really good burst after the catch in that game against Texas. So I was really impressed with TJ Moore. He's had a really good season. He's just kind of been in the shadow of a few other freshmen who have had absolutely bonkers freshman years. So that was really impressive. Really pleased to see that. And I have a lot of TJ Moore from my draft, so I'm quite happy about that.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting that the future's definitely bright for TJ Moore and his kind of freshman partner in crime in Ryan Wingo. They use him in a slightly different way in terms of how Wingo's usage is, but they've both had times where they've shined this season. They've both had games where at no point have they been expected to be the guy, because I think this year, until this playoff breakout performance, they've somewhat lived in Antonio Williams' shadow as the kind of first read in the passing attack. But he's going to be moving on, and there's going to be a vacancy of his targets. And I really feel like these two are quite a formidable duo moving forward in terms of like that kind of ACC landscape. And with Cade Klugnick throwing them the football, I really think they could be a sneaky side to watch next year, Clemson. I'll be honest, I need to get my teeth into how they've recruited this year. I really couldn't answer that question for myself at the moment, but they're going to be in a position where they can build around him, around Klubnik, with and allow him to test his arm and keep sides honest with that rushing upside he's got as well. So yeah, I think the future's bright for Clemson, and it was a really, really good performance for you to highlight there, certainly.
Yeah, and good experience for him to have had all that criticism and to have come out the other side is great, and that is the kind of experience and leadership that he can then tack on to what he brings into the 2025 season.
Yeah, listen, moving on slightly to another one of the kind of top performers and keeping it on the quarterback theme. How do you feel about how Drew Allar's got on?
Interesting. I think Penn State as a whole are playing really good football. Since that second half of the Big Ten championship game against Oregon, they've been clicking a bit more. A bit of a confusing second half against Boise State, you could say, as they kind of let them back into it a little bit. But Drew Aller was playing well throughout. I'm really encouraged. He is coming back to school, I believe. Oh, no, that's not confirmed. Sorry, forget that. That's not confirmed. There's still question marks over whether Drew Aller is going to declare for the 2025 NFL draft. So I think he's such a difficult prospect to analyze right now because he's playing well. Mm-hmm. He's had a good season, but I still think his ceiling is so much higher than what he's put on tape. So
I think I'm with you. Sorry, Jack, I cut you off there, but I think I'm with you. And the reason I asked that question is obviously, I think he did say that his intention was to go back to Penn State next year. Whilst that might not be completely official, I think the interesting thing around the lack of security in the draft eligible quarterbacks, there's been a lot of kind of people in recruiting circles and draft circles now saying, well, actually, if he keeps on doing the business, maybe he'll find that he gets that first round buzz and that first round capital. And I think I'm leaning towards him still going back next season. Again, like the jury's out on what the running backs are going to do. We all know my love for Katron Allen and how he's played so far in the playoffs. There's an awful lot to be excited about at Penn State, and it's just interesting to see whether or not they'll keep them together. But Drew Allar's playing as good as anybody, and who knows what he'll do.
If he declares for the draft, I think it's safe to assume that he's heard some really positive things on his evaluation. And, I saw a mock draft today where he was a top 3 pick. So, he, in a quarterback class where we're not sold 100% on anybody, Drew Aller, you talk about having the tools to be an NFL quarterback. Drew Aller has them all. Yeah. He's put them on tape at different stages. And I don't know if we've ever had the one complete performance from him. But it could happen, and that's what NFL franchises might take a risk on, because Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, who are kind of the consensus 1 and 2 at this stage, are both in a similar boat where I don't think we've seen a complete performance from Cam Ward ever. But his ceiling is super high. So, yeah, I think if he declares, I think we can rest assured that he's got some really good feedback from his NFL evaluation.
Absolutely. And I suppose the one final name for us to mention, again, shifting things across these college football playoff games, is the name on the tip of everyone's tongue at the moment. I must have fielded more questions in WhatsApp chats and group messages about this player than anybody else, and that is Arizona State running back Cam Scatterberg. Obviously, a colossal performance from him to try and go, toe-to-toe with Texas in that quarterfinal game. Some of Cam Scatterberg's stats, he had 143 rushing yards on 30 carries, so just shy of 5 yards a carry, and 99 yards receiving. And he even managed to throw himself a touchdown in that game as well. 2 rushing touchdowns, threw a touchdown. Did he catch one as well, do I think? Did he do the hat trick?
He did.
So it was a phenomenal performance. And this just kind of leads me into my next point. I've got another name I want to talk about from outside the playoffs as well. But I just want to talk about hot take season. And I want to talk about something we mentioned earlier and people tuning in now to the expanded format of the college playoffs and a lot of eyes being drawn to some of these standout performances. And these players rightly deserve their moment in the sun and deserve their flowers. Yeah, absolutely. Cam Scatterberg, after that excellent quarterfinal performance, deserves every accolade coming his way. I've got a question for you, Jack. How many Devy leagues do you play in where Cam Scatterberg has been drafted?
I can tell you that is a very distinct 0.
Samesies. Okay. Now, I don't think that's a coincidence. When we did our top 10 running backs, kind of November time, we did a breakdown of where the class was at, and we listed our top 10 running backs and honorable mentions. Cam Scatterberg did not even make the list, okay, for either of us in the top 10 or an honorable mention. And I don't think that despite the numbers he's put up, and he has put up some excellent numbers, we've continually warned like our listeners about the concerns with elite college production not necessarily linking to translatable skills in the NFL and making them a draftable player. And I suppose I just want to talk about, like I say, hot take season and how to keep an even keel, not overreact to some of these performances. Let your league mates do that. What I will say is right now, I don't know of a Devy league where Cam Scatterberg's been drafted either, which means he is going to be a highly sought after depleted rookie draft gem. I think that is the point where you take him and then sell for a very quick profit, because right now his price is incredibly high. It's interesting when you actually listen to people in draft circles and you look at mock drafts from experts, they're not hyping him up the same way X is. And people on Twitter are. They are telling you he is at best a late day 2 pick, more than likely a round 4, round 5 pick on on day 3. How many of these guys go on to forge really significant careers as a dynasty or Devy asset? And listen, right now, I would take him. I would take him in a depleted rookie draft, and I would sell at the first opportunity, because I trust what I've seen. I trust that the stat padding and the significant numbers he's put up is a reflection of the competition he's played, and not necessarily the signs of a running back who is going to break out at the next level.
Yeah, it's a super interesting case study, isn't it? Because actually, I have spoken of productive college players who can make it in the NFL, but the caveat that is really needs to be mentioned here with Cam Scatterberg is he's never been on Devy radars, and his top end speed is a big reason for that. Now, he certainly was impressive, and I love watching him play. Don't get me wrong. I think he is brilliant. And the hype he is currently getting will push him up the boards of your rookie drafts. Now, the question mark here is, when are you doing a draft? Because if you are doing a rookie draft pre-NFL draft, then that is a pick that I am looking to sell. Like you say, you're going to draft him and sell him before the NFL draft comes along, because
before anyone can put a stopwatch on him at the combine.
Yeah, certainly that. Or, well, he might opt out with that one. You never know. But you and I are on the same page here that he is probably not going to be a day 2 pick. And I don't think a big playoff performance will change that. He'll certainly get some love. He'll be a lot of people's sleeper picks as we approach rookie draft season. But I think if your draft is after the NFL draft, which let's be honest, most drafts will be, I think his value is going to have taken a hit already. So this is maybe a hypothetical that we don't really need to, or you as a listener, as a player, aren't going to need to address too highly. But some hearts may be broken with how high they think Cam Scatterbury is going to go.
Yeah, and I mean, what for to our active audience, we'll give them that advice. To people who are asking me in league chats about how high they should draft him, like, I'm letting them make their own mind up and letting them fall on their own sword. If they listen to this, then they'll get that advice. If not, well, that's their fault.
No definitive statement.
Absolutely.
You could take him at 101.
Yeah. No, I just think it's interesting because, like I say, hot take season has led people to believe that Cam Scatterbury now is a back end of the first round running back in rookie drafts. And I'm looking at that saying, when you've got Marion Hampton, Caleb Johnson, Quinshon Judkins, Trevion Henderson, heck, countless others that we've mentioned, DJ Givens, you name them, Devin Neal, I would rather have them all before I look at Cam Scatterbury. And I don't apologize for that. Like, if other people want to hype up and believe what they've seen in this limited window, go nuts. But I think there's a reason, like we say, he's not been spoke of in Devy circles ever, in spite of some very significant production.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Right. The next person we wanted to have a look at, because of another brilliant bowl game performance, is Ole Miss quarterback Jackson Dart. Now, I was listening to a podcast this morning where they were discussing Lane Kiffin's most recent interview, where he put a little sly remark on the fact that Jackson Dart could be back next year. Now, Jackson Dart is technically out of eligibility. However, there are discussions that all players, all college athletes are going to be given 5 years of eligibility, just to kind of put one paintbrush stroke over eligibility and try and sort out what is really a mess when we've got like 8th or 9th year players still starting. It's all a bit confusing. So I don't think it will happen, but I have to say I didn't watch the bowl game. But Phil, you've got some thoughts on Jackson Dart.
Yeah, so I did. Obviously, we all know that I'm a closet Ole Miss fan these days. And after Jackson Dart being my college fantasy quarterback this year, I decided, ride or die, I'll watch the bowl game. I'll see how they get on, because I'm interested. I like him. I like Jackson Dart as a player. I like the skill set. It's the type of quarterback that I like to watch. And he was excellent. He really, really was. He played a very, very good game. 27 of 35 completions, 404 yards, and 4 passing touchdowns. And I think what was really interesting was just how impressive some of his passing was. Tight window throws with zip, acceleration, where only his receivers could get them. There were some... Look, we call them Sunday throws. Like, we call them Sunday throws because they're throws that quarterbacks that play in the NFL on a Sunday can make. And I think where we are clamoring to find our QB in a group that haven't been able to set themselves apart, be it Cam Ward, like we've already said, in his moments he's been brilliant. In others, he leaves us questions about his decision making. There's a lot again about, we actually started to warm to him as the season went on, but there's a lot of talk now that people aren't as high on Shedeur Sanders from an athletic profile, and that perhaps he doesn't set himself apart as a first round talent, yet he's likely to go top 2. People are desperate. People are desperate to find someone and make them QB1. It's the reason, like we've already mentioned, all the talk about Drew Aller. Oh, well, if he plays well in the playoffs, he could still declare. We're desperate. We're desperate to find someone that the media want to fall in love with and sling themselves into the QB1 conversation. Jackson Dart has got some fantastic skills, and I think will make the league and be around the league for several years. I just can't see it realistically being as a high impact starter. And ultimately there are only 32 jobs. And we know that with Tennessee now having the 101 in the NFL draft and Cleveland at 2, we know that those the two top quarterbacks are likely to go in those picks. Forget the fact the Browns have got Deshaun Watson. Okay. So then you've got to look and say, right, well, where else is there a really good opportunity and a really good opening? New York, Giants, they don't take him in the first round. The Jets probably won't take him in the first round. They still don't know what Aaron Rodgers is going to do. There's so many questions. But ultimately, there's only 32 jobs. And as good a collegiate player as Jackson Dart has been, I don't know that he's got enough to take one of those 32 jobs immediately. Never mind being overhyped as the potential QB1 because we're desperate to find someone to fall in love with.
Yeah, I think the Ole Miss offense lends itself really well if you are a wide receiver. For your draft stock, for a quarterback, it's a little simplistic.
Yes,
in my opinion, and I think there'll be so much that Jackson Dart will have to learn when he makes it to an NFL franchise that I don't believe he can be a day one starter by any means. Now, that doesn't mean he can't learn all of that and develop and grow and become a starter. I can see it. I can see a path for him. Maybe a little more hope than yourself, Phil, but it is ludicrous that we are catapulting quarterbacks into that first round conversation just because of the desperation at the position. We've seen, put it this way, there was good process in drafting Sam Darnold as high as he went in the NFL draft. Now, it didn't work out initially, but we've seen this season why he was drafted so highly as he's kind of reveled in the Minnesota offense. And that is a totally different situation than catapulting a fun, exciting quarterback into the first round and thinking that they can do the same. They're chalk and cheese. They're not the same thing.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I just come back to this thing. Like, I don't know whether it's the increased exposure seemingly this time, whether it's more people tuning in and looking, but we seem to really be we're in the peak hot take season. And for those people who maybe don't play Devy but are tuning in to listen to us because of what we know about these college prospects and what we've watched, just don't buy everything you read. Like, really take the time to do the work and look at the tape yourself and make your own mind up. Listen, if what we've said tonight, you go away, you watch that quarterfinal game between Arizona State and Texas, and you go, nah, do you know what? Cam Scatterbo's my RB1. Like, more power to you. At least you've made your own decision. But don't just do it because people on X are hyping them up. Like, go away and make that decision for yourself. And base it on good process. That way you can happily fall on your sword, and either claim victory and laugh at us all later, or go, right, okay, how do I review my process moving forward?
It's exactly that. It's keeping true to your process, whether that is you doing the analysis yourself and looking for the things that you like to see in an NFL prospect that is going to be fantasy valuable, or if it's trusting the analysts that you find online and their process, because I think, like you said, you won't find them swinging their opinion on players based on one performance in the playoffs. If you want to watch the hot take talking head TV shows in America, then sure, you're going to have your opinion swayed, because that is what they are. They are a hot takes business. They want eyes on, they want conversation. So even if they don't believe the things that they're saying, they're going to say the controversial or the exciting things and try and be the one person that makes the right call that is totally left field.
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
we probably will have. We probably will have a totally left field first round draft pick. Whether it will be a quarterback, I am doubtful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Cool. All right. So that's bowl games and overreactions and how to cope with them. Our kind of bit of wary advice, as well as highlighting some Devy stars who have made a real impact over the course of those games. Do you know what we've not talked yet? We've not talked transfer portal. Since we last met, we put together our Christmas list of where we'd maybe like some of these top portal entrants to land. A whole host of things have happened. Lots of big name Devy stars have committed to new schools, taken their talents to new situations in this forthcoming year, and we just want to kind of touch on loads. I mean, we'll mention loads tonight, and it will be nowhere near exhaustive. You'll be sat there screaming at your screen saying, "Tell us about," and we'll skip over that one because there are just so many. But there are some that we want to touch on. So where do you want to start, Jack?
I think the big one, the big running back one that I want to talk about is Justice Haynes, because he has committed to Michigan, which I think is a fantastic move for him and his Devy stock. Going from a timeshare at Alabama, he's really shared that backfield, to a Michigan offense that have shown that they will firstly run the ball a lot. So even if it is a timeshare, he's going to have more carries than he had at Alabama. He's going to have a very run-friendly scheme, a totally new offensive line. So let's not get carried away. He's not going to have the same offensive line as we've seen Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards have over the last few years, which was fantastic for them. But I think it's a really good move for Haynes. It's really good for his Devy value because it does need a little bit of resurrecting.
Yep. No, listen, I agree. It's one of those where, as an Alabama fan who has very much ridden the Justice Haynes hype train since watching his high school tape before his freshman season, there's a part of me that's gutted. But that's not about my fandom. What I actually want is, as someone who believes in the talent and drafted so many Devy shares, I want him to go to a situation where he's got the opportunity to really showcase himself. And I think it is an absolutely brilliant landing spot with plenty of opportunity. Donovan Edwards should finally be gone. That bum, Donovan Edwards. Obviously, Khalil Mullins is looking like a late day 2, early day 3 NFL pick. The opportunity is there for him to take that backfield, be an outlet, a safety valve. Oh my God, why am I blanking? Should the incoming freshman quarterback win it? Why am I blanking?
Do you know what? I was having the exact same problem as you led up to that. Let's have a look. Bryce Underwood.
Underwood, yeah.
Of course.
So, he'll be, if Bryce Underwood wins that job, obviously he's going to need someone reliable to carry part of that load with him, and that can absolutely be Justice Haynes. Absolutely. And hate to see him go, but from a Devy perspective, love to watch him leave. Fair play to him. Fair play. A good portal move. The one I want to look at is a prospect we've not even spoken about on this show before, because he has hardly set foot on a collegiate campus. And I want to talk about Oregon's 5-star quarterback, Jaron Kiwe Sagapalutele. Let's see how I pronounce that one.
Good effort.
A 2025 prospect who committed to the Ducks after originally being heavily recruited by Cal, throughout his recruitment process. He flipped his recruitment on signing day, and it caused quite a shock. 5-star quarterback, and he was taking his services to Oregon, and he has landed in Oregon. He has trained with the team. And within a couple of weeks of him landing there, before his first even kind of spring camp and off-season ball, has entered the transfer portal, which is absolutely bonkers. Like, and for me, this just smacks of one thing. He's cited his reason for it as wanting to be able to play as a freshman. Obviously, he may well have seen Dylan Gabriel leaving, and thought there was an opportunity there. And it just says to me two things. One, this young man has never looked at a collegiate depth chart ever in his life. He's not looked at where he's gone and done his homework. And two, if you earn a share of Dante Moore in Devy, like after him transferring last year and then backing up Dylan Gabriel for a year, maybe that share is looking like it might be on the rebound. And because it wouldn't strike me, it strikes me as that this young man has gotten to Eugene, has gone out and done some practices and thought, I want to start as a freshman. Well, slap my ass and call me Susan, because I am nowhere near this guy, like in terms of ability and level, and has gone, right, well, in that case, I'm off.
Yeah, and I can't fathom the self-confidence. Let's call it self-confidence. Keep it positive. That is some strong self-confidence to think that he could walk into Eugene and start day one for the Oregon Ducks, regardless of the Dante Moore situation, because I think Dante Moore has taken a very wise decision to make his move to Oregon last season, know that he's going to sit, but take over that job, learn the offense, get comfortable with the receivers, get comfortable with the coaches. So Dante Moore is very likely to be the starter for Oregon next season, which I think we kind of expected anyway. But also still in that room is Austin Novosad, who's a very highly rated quarterback recruit as well from the 2024 class. And he's not entered the transfer portal. Now, I did expect him to. He hasn't, as far as I'm aware. And so that quarterback room is really strong. So to think that you can come in and take over as a freshman, fair play for that self-confidence, but it's clearly not worked out for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Where do you want to go next?
I am super interested in a trend that we are seeing from the transfer portal, because obviously the transfer portal is now shut for entering your name, but you don't have to have had a landing spot before that window closed. So we're seeing running backs taking a major step up, or we could say we've got programs who are reaching maybe downwards, not to be disrespectful.
No.
Reaching down either from Power 4 to Group of 5, or from a more established Power 4 program, reaching down into a less established Power 4 program, and taking some really productive running backs. And I think we're going to see a ton of completely untapped running backs in terms of Devy discussion suddenly enter the conversation. So I feel like we're going to have loads of names that we are discussing that previously have only been on our radar for college fantasy football.
Yep, without a doubt.
So you've got Mackie Hughes, who was at Tulane, super productive back in a run-heavy offense. So he ran the ball 265 times last season, 1,401 yards, 15 touchdowns. Very impressive. Over 5 yards a carry, 19 catches, 176 yards, 2 touchdowns. It's not a major part of his game, but he can do it. I'm just really interested to see what he's going to do at Oregon. He is rumored, he's been crystal balled by 24/7 to land at Oregon in the Dan Lanning offense. That's a huge step up. No offense meant to Tulane, but to go
Yeah, of
to
course.
the number one ranked team across this year, that's where Oregon have been. And if we're honest, we go back to the college football playoff conversation. The playoffs are great fun, and we are going to find a champion. But I think we all know that the best team, if we're looking to crown the best team of the 2024 college season, it was Oregon, an undefeated Oregon. So he's going there. Jordan James has declared for the NFL draft. So this backfield is open. Mackie Hughes, how many of you have heard of him? If you're not playing college fantasy football, probably not.
This is it.
There's a list, there's a whole bunch of others who, like I say, they're on that college fantasy football radar, but not Devy circle. So Fluff Bothwell, great name. He's transferring up to Mississippi State from the group of five. CJ Campbell is going from Florida Atlantic to Rutgers. Eli Sanders, New Mexico, electric offense this season. He's transferred to USC. And Quinton Joyner has transferred out of USC. So there's an opening there, as Woody Marks is going to the NFL too. So that's a completely open backfield. Terrion Stewart had a great year at Bowling Green. He's going to Virginia Tech. And then one of my favorites, now this is probably not a Devy name, but it is a really fun, exciting guy that I've been on since his freshman year. And that's Kavorian Barnes, who's been at UTSA. He has transferred to TCU. And TCU are a really fun offense, really fun. So there's a whole host of openings there for him. Now, he might not win that job, but that's if he does, if he becomes a Devy name, this is where you heard it first. Okay, guys.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that trend is really intriguing to me, and that is something that I think we were going to have to keep tabs on that maybe we weren't expecting as much.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'll throw one more in there because yesterday, sorry to bring it back to Alabama, but Alabama dipped into the portal and took Louisiana transfer, Drillin Washington.
That's right.
So 5'9", last year he had 229 carries, 1,350 yards and 11 touchdowns. The guy is another baller. And again, so Justice Haynes, a high-profile Devy name that everyone knows because he went to Alabama and he was a high recruit, moves out, and rather than try and replace like for like with another high incoming freshman recruit, we'll go to the portal. We'll take a guy who's been productive, and attack it that way. I think you're right. It is a trend to keep an eye on, and yeah, we'll have to see how it goes because. Would you dare take one at the moment with a Devy pick? I don't know that I would.
Yeah. I'm very happy owning them in my Campus to Canton leagues where they can score me points.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, I don't know. It would, yeah.
I suppose there's almost like that kind of sample size. We need this incoming crop we've just mentioned to be the test subjects, and either their Devy stock goes wild next year. Depending on how much eligibility they've got remaining, or they're a depleted rookie gem. And if this batch hit off, we look for that trend to continue next year, and we get in early. But right now, without that kind of proof in the pudding, it would be foolish to say, go away and draft all these players. Like, just because they're taking a step up doesn't mean they're going to hit at all. No. But obviously, if there is a theme, and it almost feels like... And I've heard people mentioning it with the changes made to JUCO eligibility recently. Like, it feels like that baseball system of a minors league. If you are a powerhouse program like an Alabama, an Ohio State, an Oregon, and you want more of these guys, do you let them go to a JUCO school that you've got good ties with and keep in contact and bring them through as they develop? I don't know. I suppose that's a different conversation for a different day.
But yeah, we'll have the politics of college football and all its darkness some other time.
Yeah. A couple more just to mention and throw out there then. If I throw out the list that we've got compiled here, Jack, and then you pick the one that grabs you the most. Wide receivers, okay, so Devontae Ross from Troy to Penn State, Eric Singleton Jr., Georgia Tech to Auburn, Zach Branch to Georgia. Barry and Brown to LSU. Kevin Concepcion has gone from NC State to Texas A&M. I will just chip in there and say I think that is a brilliant move. I'm gutted he didn't go to Alabama, but I think that is a great choice for him. And then quarterbacks, John Mattia to Oklahoma, Jackson Arnold to Auburn, Malachi Nelson to UTEP, and Caden Salter to Colorado. Is there anything there that you want to touch on quickly?
Yeah, I do not like the Zach Branch landing spot in Georgia. I think Zach Branch was an electric freshman who we really got excited about as a gadgety kind of guy, punt returner, get the ball in his hands in space. And Georgia have just struggled to do that with a whole host of gadgety guys this season. Their offense has not clicked particularly well. So I'm not super excited about that landing spot. It's probably great for him and NIL purposes, that kind of thing. And I do love Barry and Brown to LSU. I think that connection with Nussmeier could be fantastic. And he really does. Barry and Brown has shown us all the traits. He's not had any like singular super productive season. And next year could be that for him in that offense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The one that stands out to me there, like I said, I love the Kevin Concepcion move to Texas A&M. I think there's opportunity there for him to see a boatload of targets and really craft himself to be a focal part of that offense and get used in a far better way than he was wasted somewhat this year at NC State. But the other one that stands out is John Mattia to Oklahoma. I did a little bit of digging after hearing that he'd entered the portal and he was moving to the SEC. I'd not seen a great deal of his tape from last year, and blow me down. I like what I saw. Really, really exciting QB prospect. Now, we have our misgivings, and we've given advice previously about drafting Devy quarterbacks. I like to take one per draft if I can. And I'm interested to see what type of buzz he gets in Devy circles, because he might be my guy that I throw a late round pick at this year if he's still available. If anyone's stupid enough to take him high, like amongst our incoming freshman crop and things like that, well, then fair play, I'll let him go. But if he slips, he might be the one that I take a little flyer on.
Yeah, I absolutely love him. He was breaking records left, right, and center at Washington State last year, and he was so much fun to have on a college fantasy football roster. If you had him, you probably won the championship. He was that good. So yeah, really excited to see he's followed his head coach to Oklahoma. See how he fits into the offense and how he plays at a higher level of competition, probably. Well, certainly in the SEC, and we'll see how the Oklahoma offense shapes up.
Yeah, absolutely. So listen, moving on then to that kind of last section before we wrap it up this evening. Responding to stars going back to school. Now, when I wrote this on the show sheet, Jack, here's what I was thinking. You 2-3 years ago, you draft, you do your Devy draft, and we get excited and gooey-eyed about the incoming freshman crop, and we want to be the first one to get those names down. So let's go back 3 years, and you were the guy who drafted a Nicholas Singleton, a Drew Aller, insert other third-year breakout there, or third, someone that was expected to go in for 3 and then straight out into the league. What I want to focus on is what your thought process should be now for stars who have decided that they are going back to school. Obviously, since those Devy drafts, even 2 to 3 years ago, NIL and the transfer portal is changing things, and it is changing things at such a speed, you feel like people far more qualified than ourselves are struggling to keep up. And I think we've got some responding to do as Devy players. I would hope, if we just mention the 3 big names that we've got written down here, we've written Evan Stewart has announced he's going to go back and play his 4th season at Oregon, which I think is a great move for the boy. I really, really do. I think that's a good decision. Drew Aller, we've already mentioned, could still have his head turned, but right now has suggested his intention is to go back to Penn State. And Trevor Etienne, the Georgia running back, has decided that he is going to stay in school another year. He was widely tipped last year, particularly after the move to Georgia, to really kind of hit his stride in year 3 and look to be entering the NFL. I suppose we've got a couple of things here. I want to talk about the risk of setting a timeline and hoping to have a guy in 3 years. And how the landscape of NIL and the transfer portal is making it far easier for guys to go back to school, and how we counter it as Devy players. How do we target our builds and target our timelines for aging veterans that we might want to move from our roster and still get capital for, with the balance of not being able to guarantee that an Evan Stewart is going to turn around and say, actually, I'm going to go back to Oregon for another year, and potentially ruin those timelines for us in terms of our build and our management of our roster. So yeah, it's an open floor, really. Any thoughts as I've rabbited on there?
Yeah, I think NIL certainly playing a part, but also the expanded playoffs make it an easier path or an easier dream to chase a national championship title. So with Evan Stewart going to Oregon in particular, it's easier for him to say, I'm going to come back for a year where I've got some guaranteed earnings through NIL deals and can probably renegotiate. But it's also an opportunity where, you know, they were dreaming of a national championship this year. He's got a chance to come back and win one next year, and not. I don't think he can hurt his draft stock. I think this year hasn't been great for his draft stock, so he probably doesn't need another year in that offense. We were so excited about how he could carve out his specific role in the Oregon offense, and it just hasn't come to fruition quite as well. And with the other receivers moving on, I think Evan Stewart has the chance to be the number one guy in his role in that Oregon offense next year. So I think it's NIL. I think it's also the expanded playoffs for those top teams that is going to lock people in for a bit longer. And it depends what your strategy is beforehand for Devy. Now, I think we would both say, please don't lock all your hopes and dreams on your Devy assets being the savior of your roster, because there is so much variance. There's injury, there's drop in form, there's change of head coach, change of scheme that happens in college, and then just some guys just don't translate to the NFL, even though everything seems to be aligned in the right way. So I think the strategy shift will be how you spread out your Devy prospects, because some of them are going to come out in 3 years, some of them aren't going to come out for 5 years. So being able to spread your portfolio across NFL drafts is going to become more difficult, but I don't think that should change your process on how you evaluate Devy prospects. I think we preach different ideas on how you should approach Devy drafting and Devy building. And one conclusion I'll have is I don't want to monopolize one class anymore.
Yes. Yeah,
that's probably the one conclusion, but it's not really a strategy that I like to enroll anyway.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me, like when I've been looking at it, is I think I'm gonna, as time goes on, move away from projections based on a draft class. So I'm not going to sit and say this wide receiver is 2025, this receiver is 2026, this wide receiver is 2027, based on when they enter and when we think they're going to project to leave, because we always base that on a 3-year collegiate career. And that obviously allowed for variance anyway, because some would stay longer, some would be out in 3. But now it becomes even murkier. So rather than try and set my receivers by, receivers, running backs, whatever it might be, by year, I think you've got to kind of go, we've got to do a bit more work in terms of one board per position and blend it, and really do a little bit more work on, okay, I'm not just looking at the guys that are eligible for this next draft class. I'm looking at the guys that are eligible for the next 2, because they could hit at either time. And when the incoming freshmen come in, yeah, it's hard to do straight away, but we've got to get them into those slots quicker, and try and get an idea of the overall kind of positional rankings rather than, right, these guys should be out next year, so I'll draft them a little bit higher. It's really got to be slotted more by positional ranking rather than class ranking.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thought. It's not something I've put too much time into, if I'm honest. I think it's a really good conversation for us to maybe revisit in time as well, as we learn more about the transfer portal and how that impacts the Devy profiles. I think one thing it won't change is your generational prospects.
Yeah, sure.
Especially at wide receiver. So you look at Jeremiah Smith. We knew that he was going to be pretty impressive coming in. Maybe not as impressive as he has been. He's flown through that ceiling that freshmen tend to have. But when you're evaluating players like Jeremiah Smith, he's not going to come back for a fourth year or a fifth year unless there's some weird injury, like if there's a big injury or whatever. So I think you're kind of safe still with your elite prospects. It's those next tier down that I'm going to be more concerned about. And actually it probably pushes me towards trading those away earlier. That, as I'm spitballing here, this is a strategy that is yet to be implemented, but maybe it pushes me towards trading away those second tier prospects earlier for proven NFL assets, even if that's a lower tier of NFL asset than I was hoping for, because the security blanket is there because they're there and they're scoring your points straight away and the variance is less. You don't often get someone who is a stable fantasy production in the NFL for 2 years suddenly drop off the radar, whereas a Devy prospect can absolutely flame out.
Yeah, I think that makes complete sense. The other thing for me there, like that we've not really discussed, is how quarterbacks are leading the charge. And we're seeing that makes complete sense for QBs. We've talked a lot about time on task and the opportunity to improve their game. And like Drew Eller's doing it this year, or at least he's made the noise that he's going to. We'll wait to be seen. We've long said Arch Manning can ride on both his immense talent and the weight of his last name, and choose to stay. Really cement himself a legacy as a collegiate player, potentially, and enter the league as a more well-rounded prospect. And I do wonder, we've issued our health warning caveats about Devy quarterbacks and strategy for drafting Devy quarterbacks, but are these guys going to come into the league, the ones that do make it there and do hit? Are they going to come in and achieve more success through sticking it out in this collegiate process? So maybe, again, further down the line, sample size, once we've seen it happen for a few of these guys now, we'll have to go away and review, actually, does this strategy towards taking Devy quarterbacks change as well? So an awful lot to think about.
I think that's a really good point. I think that it gives an extra buffer for quarterback prospects, doesn't it? To that well-roundedness is really key. Like you've got quarterbacks who, like Jalen Milroe, who clearly are not well-rounded prospects but have elite upside. They're not going to change. They are going to enter the league as soon as they get a good evaluation. But those quarterbacks, exactly. But those quarterbacks, Arch Manning's a bit privileged because he has so much insulation because of his name and also his talent. But someone like Drew Aller has an extra buffer of another year where he can work on the things that his NFL evaluation has said he needs to in a safer environment, and he can speak to his coaches, especially if you are that talented. Like Drew Aller is the centerpiece of Penn State's offense. Maybe not the superstar, but he is the centerpiece. He's really important. He can help mold the offense around what he needs to improve, as well as what helps the team.
No, agreed. So yeah, listen, I added that to the show sheet this evening because I think any opportunity to talk strategy and there may well be Devy owners out there sitting wondering about these same things. Now, I'm not saying for a moment that we've got all the answers, but the opportunity to talk it aloud and put our thought process out there for other people to listen to, and hey, listen, if you've got opinions on this, come and talk to us on X. Come and tell us what you think, because Devy's changing, and as the collegiate landscape, as Devy players, if we want to stay one step ahead, we've got to find a way that works. And sometimes talking it out loud and running that thought process by each other is the best way of getting that ball rolling. So I think a really, really worthwhile conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you.
No worries. Right. Well, that just leaves me to say, Jack, I sincerely hope that as an Ohio State fan, you get the result that your team requires in the semi-final matchup this weekend. Perhaps more so because you've been plotting a potential trip to the national championship final, all being well. So, I've got my fingers crossed for you, bud. Also because I had a £20 outright on Ohio State to win the Natty at the start of the season, which stands to make me quite a nice little bit of money. So yeah, I'm back in your corner. Look, good luck. I say it like you're going to be playing. I imagine sat watching it at home, you'll feel like you are. And then good luck, obviously. If you get to make that once in a lifetime trip, I'll be absolutely pulling for you. We might even get you to do some kind of live feed from the game. In the meantime, guys, obviously we are the Wildcard Devy team. You can follow us on X at Wildcard Devy. You can follow myself at Posh Players FF, Jack at Jack CDTCDCTT. And you can follow the whole excellent Fantasy Wildcard team, minus the gaffer, but with his new better replacement, James, on the Dynasty Show. You can follow the Rewind Show and the awesome team there. And listen, the whole team are putting out amazing content constantly. You can find us on Fantasy Wildcard on X and on YouTube. Okay. We will be back in a fortnight, all been well, unless Jack is the other side of the world. But what is for certain is you can look forward to more Devy goodness coming in the not too distant future. Have a great evening.
See you later.